So I think it's personally very important that younger enthusiasts can get into watches and also recognize that you don't have to spend a crazy amount of money to get a great watch. And when you're entering the professional part of your life, I think owning a great watch is a great thing that you can grow with and look down with throughout the day as you're working, and just be reminded of your hard work and kind of what you're working towards and how valuable your time is. So a video that I have released in the past was looking at watches for young business professionals. And I want to revisit that topic here in 2022 because it has been some years since I've looked at this, trying to find watches that are in that price bracket and range and also of the same theme for those that might have to go to a more dressy attire, white collar type of work environment, and what are some great options to choose from as you're working up from a few different tiers. So in this video, what I'm going to do is go through some different great options for those in that business professional world. Maybe they're just getting out into their professional career for the first time, looking at 3 different tiers. So the first tier is going to be just got my first job. The second tier is then going to be moving into 5 years of experience. And at the far end, as we start to get closer to $5,000, going to make some recommendations for those that are maybe 10 years out from starting their career. Still, in a lot of ways, a young professional. So how this is going to work, I'm going to be looking at watches more dress oriented because of the environment that we're going for. Now with the changing and how people are dressing, this might be a little bit more specific than what some people might want, but I have plenty of other videos looking at everyday style watches, looking at dive style watches. So if you don't want to really be geared around this style, I have some great videos as well I can link to in the description. Also, 1 watch per brand because I didn't want this to be just over and over again repeating the same brands. I really want to try to focus on 1 key watch from 1 brand, and also where I can offer up something maybe new, while of course not omitting some obvious choices. I'm also not going to be focusing on micro brands in this video just because I thought that that would open things up like crazy. And if you're talking about your first watch, I think going for something a bit more mainstream is probably a bit more appropriate. Also, before jumping into this video, we did just release a great article. It's supposed to be a comprehensive guide to 50 luxury watch brands that you should know in 2022. The whole point of this is to be a great jumping off point for those that might not be familiar with all the aspects of the luxury watch industry. So looking at some backstory of the brands, looking at some of their key models that you should consider, their history, also looking at the ownership, whether they're independent, as well as if they have a parent company, so knowing the business structure of it, and also some additional fun facts that might be some good party tricks for those at maybe your next watch meetup or wherever you're headed. So definitely check it out. It'll be in the description down below, very comprehensive, and I even learned a thing or two when reading it as well. So definitely check it out. Now for our first category here, we have that under $1,000 tier. This is where I would classify as kind of the first real job. We're gonna ascend in price here. Now the first obvious choice, I'm just gonna mention it. I know people are gonna be, okay, I get it. We've seen this before. The Orient Bambino, many versions to choose from, mechanical movement on the inside produced by Orient, starting prices around $130 to $160 depending on the variation version that you go for. 40.5mm case, reasonable thickness, usually typically good performance out of the movements themselves. They are going to feature mineral glass on there, so not going to be maybe the most scratch resistant, but if you're looking for a starter watch, what's the best watch you can potentially get for this dressy attire type of environment under 200 bucks? You're in Bambino. I don't need to say anymore. Now next up we have a watch from Seiko, and here we have the Seiko SRPB43, commonly referred to as being one of the cocktail time watches. So this watch and just this family of watches is going to be one of the best positioned family of watches from Seiko, from my opinion, regardless if we're talking sports or dress. These just look more expensive than they are. They do have this bubbled type of curvature to their case with that dome crystal, and do wear a little bit larger like the Orient Bambino previously, but still very well positioned. 40.5mm case, 11.8mm thickness, and a 47.5 or so lug to lug distance. These do feature the 4R series of calibers, which I think are workhorses for under $500, absolutely exceptional movements. They'll do the job, not the prettiest thing to look at, but that's okay to me. Have a variety of different dial colors to choose from. This one is, for me, one of the more versatile options that you could go for to really maximize it. If this was gonna be your one office watch, that's probably why I wanted to go for this one compared to some other ones that are a bit more playful and colorful, but a great first proper watch to own from a mechanical perspective, without question. Very intriguing dial as well, with this just rib finish. It's become a defining characteristic for this entire line. So now next up we have Hamilton, and I was struggling on what Hamilton to choose. You could definitely go for something more dressy like their Intramatics or maybe the Jazzmaster, but I wanted to lean into what they're best known for and also look for some upside, maybe not too the same level of versatility as some other watches out there because this one does lean a tad more casual, but I think it can work if you go for this dial version, and that's the white dial khaki field mechanical. So this watch to me feels the most versatile of all the khaki field lines, just because a white dial to me feels more dressy than a black dial with those faux markers. That one makes it feel a little more to the casual end of things. This one also comes with a leather NATO, which I'd probably swap out for some different straps if you wanted to. 38mm case, 9.5mm thickness, which I also like with these hand winding versions because much thinner. Will slide out underneath the dress cuff. 47mm lug to lug, which does extend out, but does wear close to a 38.5 to 39mm case. 50 meters of water resistance, which should be enough for this type of attire if you're gonna wear it to the office, while still having some upside for the weekend wear. 80-hour power reserve, sapphire crystal, and I just like this white dial. It's not maybe on the nose of what a field watch is traditionally, but still doesn't deviate too far from the formula and will maximize versatility, I think, a bit more compared to some of the other variations. So now moving into the other pillar under $1,000, we have Tissot. And Tissot, I would say, has more options than any in the price range under $1,000 for this type of individual that we're describing here. They want something that's going to be tasteful, versatile, as well as have those dressy undertones and never look out of place. Because we're so fixated on the white collar type of environment, maybe you're wearing a suit every day, that's kind of the focus here. I think the Tissot Lilac is going to be a more appropriate example compared to something like the PRX. Gentleman could absolutely be an appropriate choice, but the Lilac is more just traditional classic dress watch with its appeal, while still being viable in, I'd say, more casual environments if you do pair it with the right strap and bracelet. These watches retail just over $600. There's a new blue dial variant, which I really like. It has enough playfulness to allow it to separate from the more traditional formula of the dial design that kind of has these guilloche type elements to it. Thickness at 10mm, 48.2mm lug to lug, so a bit large on the lug to lug distance, whereas like a true 40, if not a little bit larger. 30 meters of water resistance, 80-hour power reserve, Powermatic 80 movement on the inside, sapphire crystal. And the Lilac as a collection is often overlooked, even for myself. I remember interviewing Tissot CEO, Sylvain Dalla, and he was mentioning, and I was quick to say like, oh, what are the, I'm sure that the PRX is up there with the Gentleman and the Sea Stars are top collections, but he was like, no, the Lilac is right up there as one of their best-selling models and families worldwide. So there's many people that love the Lilac, sometimes gets overlooked, and I think for many people that are looking in this direction of what could be the great first Swiss dress watch, this is a good one to look at. So now when many people think of Junghans, they're going to probably obviously think of the Max Bill. I've mentioned the Max Bill in many videos, so just to be a little bit different, let's go for a different option here, coming right under $1,000 with the Junghans Form A. So if the Max Bill is more mid-20th century in its design and its approach, I would say the Form A is rather, has a touch more of contemporary flair and more of an avant-garde approach to its design. It has a different style minute track with these smaller recessed areas. Handset is also going to be adjusted, but still has the same minimalist style backbone that becomes such a huge part of what people will associate with Junghans. This one also comes in with a different case, 39.3mm, thickness at 9.8mm, 43.9mm lug to lug. Does have an extended water resistance rating of 50 meters, has an ETA 2824 inside, and also a sapphire crystal. You're not getting that domed effect here, more of a flat sapphire, so some people might not like this one as much, but just to be different, I also like the Form A. It does come in a variety of different dial colors. I think the white, of course, that white silver is going to be the most versatile that you can choose from, and could definitely pair this up with a variety of different straps. Next, we have one of my personal favorites, and that is with the Mito Multifort Patrimony. So this is a sector-esque style dial. You have this beautiful midnight blue colored dial, really nice legibility. It's simple, it's clean. It looks like it's pulling much from the past in terms of its approach, but still feeling modern in its finishing and attention to detail. A wearable case that's going to wear probably close to a 40mm in actuality, 50 meters of water resistance. Also 80-hour power reserve. This is going to be an extended version of those modified C07 family of movements, which the Powermatic 80 is based off of. This is the C07.621, sapphire crystal, and a really nice looking watch that leans into that heritage design. So now we're moving into our next category, and that is looking at the price range around $1,000 to $2,500 or so. This is where you're maybe 5 years out, you're collecting some paychecks, you are establishing yourself in your life, and you want to get that next tier of watch, but also having some ability to still dress it up in a way. Now, with the first watch here it's going to be from Nomos. I have many watches that you can consider, but just to be a little bit different and also maybe express yourself in a different way, I think the Nomos Club and just the Club Campus collection, maybe the Club more than the Club Campus, being some great options here. The Club Campus is going to be positioned as that kind of youthful watch. It has some fun colors to choose from. I would, of course, go for something a bit more muted and controlled if you're trying to maximize it for this office type environment. These prices are also, for this watch, I think fantastic. $1,500 usually starting price for the smaller case variant. You have a few different case sizes to choose from. 36, I find, wears like a 37, 38 millimeter watch with that extended lug to lug. 100 meters of water resistance, also remarkably thin at 7.9 millimeters, which is fantastic. A lot of that is a byproduct of the movement on the inside. So this is the alpha manual movement, which I've talked about on the channel in the past. You will not be able to see it for that entry position, but for a few $100 more, you can get that Sapphire exhibition back and see this beautiful movement. This is based off of the Pazoo 7001. What Nomos did, they weren't able to get access to these movements anymore, decided to produce these movements in-house for themselves, so they didn't have to play with the games of third-party providers. So great watch, great positioning, and I think it's a fun and youthful design to look at, although maybe some being a little bit too fun and youthful in certain circumstances. So go for the ones that are a bit more tame if you want to have maximum versatility. Next up, another personal favorite of mine, and that is with Oris and the Oris Big Crown Pointer Date. Now, this is a good middle ground between going for something casual as well as dressy. It would look great in both scenarios. Of course, dial color is going to potentially impact that to some degree. The models that we're showing here are the Servo Volantes. These are new for 2022, and also most notably 38 millimeter case, which I think is a great middle ground for sizing and wearability. These now wear true to that 38 to 39 millimeter case size, which I think is the perfect size for, I would say, most people looking in the direction of these pieces. You of course do have the 36 and the 40 if you do want that. 45.5 millimeter lug to lug, only 50 meters of water resistance. This watch does feel like it potentially could have viability to have more, and I think a lot of people would love to see it, but 50 meters should be good for many people that are looking for this office environment. SW200 on the inside, modified for that pointer date function. But I really like these watches, modern wearability, and then fusing it with some classic elements with those cathedral hands and of course the pointer date, which becomes a defining element of the approach to this entire model family. So very similar to Nomos when it comes to this category. There are many watches from this brand as well that could be included here. I think a lot of more dressy oriented watches they do exceptionally well with Nomos and their watches. But here I want to do similar to what I did with Nomos and try to find something that can maximize middle ground, but also work in those dressier type of situations. And here we have the Longines Spirit. This one being in 37 millimeters, just given that it's going to wear close to a 38 to 39 millimeter case. 44.9 millimeter lug to lug, going to wear very similar to that of the Club Campus actually on the wrist. It's also relatively thin, coming at 11.9 millimeters. Water resistance at 100 meters, so nice to see there for some utility. But the big thing here is the movement inside. You're getting a 72-hour power reserve, COSC certified movement, and I think for the money, this is probably one of the better options you're gonna find. For the bracelet version, you can get it for around $2,400. And for me, I think going for the bracelet version is worth it. The bracelet does have some elegance to it. And then whenever you do wanna swap it out, you could do it with great ease given the flexibility of these dials and their kind of tendency to work with pretty much everything. So now next up, we have our final tier, 10 years of experience. This is where I would say the cutoff is for a young professional, depending on when you started, but I'd say generally speaking, you're a pretty seasoned individual at this point. Looking between $2,500, $5,000, you've been climbing the ladder, you've been working hard. Now you're looking for that first, maybe more into the luxury end of watches, maybe at that entry door of luxury. And to start us off here, we're looking at around $3,000. We have the Baume & Mercier Clifton Baumatic. So this is a watch to me that is one of the more underrated and well-positioned dress watches in this price range, around $3,000. A lot of this comes down to the movement on the inside. Sure, you have a variety of different dial colors to choose from, wearable case with the 40 millimeter case and 10.5 millimeter thickness. But again, really what allows this watch to separate is that movement. You're talking about 120-hour power reserve, COSC certified movement as well. This movement is being produced in combination with Richemont's production arm for movements in Val Flourier and made for Baume & Mercier, I believe, unless you're talking about the Caliber 400 from Oris. I think this is going to be the most attainable watch with this level of power reserve. There might be some additional options, but at a 4 hertz beat rate, I think this is going to be probably the most extended power reserve, plus a COSC certified movement, good looks, wearable case. This just jumps off from a spec side, but also from a look side of just looking the part and being the part. Now, next up, we have Tudor. Now, Tudor, of course, being known for their tool-oriented watches, their dive watches. They do have things like the Tudor Style in the 1926 that are going to be more dressy, but I think for versatility, you have under $5,000 to spend, maybe around $3,000 to spend. I think the Tudor Black Bay 36 and the other variations and sizes are probably the safer bet. You get the Black Bay DNA infused within a watch that has some dressy undertones to it, or at least has versatile upside to it and what it's going for. This is in many ways the Explorer or the Oyster Perpetual for the Tudor family of watches. A 36 millimeter case, 10.5 millimeter thickness, lug to lug of 44 millimeters, 150 meters of water resistance, so exceptional to see there. And movement on the inside is an ETA 2824. Also though, with the recently unveiled S&G models, you do have now their MT movements becoming available in a variety of these different sized watches, except for that smaller version will have a 50-hour power reserve. All the other ones will have 70 hours of power reserve and a cost certified movement on the inside. So really nice to see that as another option. And those are also coming in the price range where it would be acceptable. If two-tone is your thing, that could certainly be an option too. So when it comes to Omega, there are 4 collections that define the brand. You have the Seamaster, the Speedmaster, the Constellation, and the DeVille. Now the DeVille is a model family that sells exceptionally well in different parts of the world, maybe not as much in the US market and parts of Europe, but still a huge focus for Omega. And actually the place to get into if you're talking about what is the most attainable Omega watch in a modern new context. And that is with the Omega DeVille Prestige. So these watches are going to be available under $4,000 for an Omega watch new, and of course are going to be more towards the dressy side of things, and maybe lacking some of the personality and character as some of their other offerings, but at the end of the day, still very fine and nicely made watches. You have a variety of different dial colors as well as case sizes to choose from. The one here, 36.8 millimeters, thickness at 10 millimeters and a lug to lug of 42 millimeters, 30 meters of water resistance. And the big reason why these watches are more attainable is because of the movement. So these are using those early coaxial movements, the Omega 2500. These were used by a variety of different model families from the likes of some Seamasters, Aquaterras, most commonly using these in the past. And for those not familiar, this is taking it at a 2892 architecture and adding a coaxial escapement to it. It does have some other modifications, but at the end of the day, this is kind of the core entry-level coaxial movement that you can get. And as a byproduct of that, allowing these to become available for under $4,000 new. And now for our final watch here, we have a watch from Cartier with the Cartier Tank Must XL automatic. Now, a lot of people, I don't believe, consider Cartier when it comes to under $5,000 because they think about many quartz offerings. Cartier now being the second most proficient or largest brand when it comes to Swiss watch production in the industry. So that's notable news as well. I think a big reason why they do this and why they're successful at it is because they think about every segment of the luxury market, including this entry-level position for this luxury segment here. This is a great example and I think a great watch to look at if you're just trying to get into a bare bones Cartier tank and get it in a wearable size. So this comes in $3,700, an automatic movement on the inside, still reasonably thick at 8.4 millimeters. If you wanted to save even more money, you could go for the Solar Beat, but I think the mechanical option for many enthusiasts might be right up their alley. And you could argue under $5,000, is there more of an iconic dress watch design that you could go for? Arguably not. I think this really is it. So it makes a ton of sense. The rectangular case might be off-putting for some, but for others, it's the very reason why they love this design and why it's become an icon. But all right, guys, that is my list looking at some watches for young business professionals. Of course, could not mention everything. I had to try to focus it so this video wouldn't be so long. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon, really would appreciate that. And also, are you somebody that maybe started your career in the last, I don't know, year, 5 years, 10 years, and did you decide to buy a watch early on in your journey that you wore to the office time and time again? I'd love to hear that down below. What was the watch that you decided to pick and why, and how did it work for your specific role or job? Also be sure to check out that comprehensive article looking at 50 luxury watch brands that you should know in 2022. I really put a lot of time into that article, so I definitely recommend checking it out. Great way to familiarize yourself with the entire industry as well as some different indie brands out there that might slide under the radar a tad more. Also be sure to check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the new products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.